Hello, welcome to Homegrownradionj.org. Chew the Scene with Lauren, not Danny today. He couldn't be here with us, but I'm very excited because we have a great interview set up by my girl, Janine Papio. We are going to be talking to the creator of the Micro Musical Theater Show and the creative team behind the most recent podcast, City of Lights. So I would like to introduce to the Homegrown Radio Chew the Scene airwaves, Alton Christensen, Julie Weiner, and Gabrielle Wagner Mann. Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Hi. Hi. Yes, I can.
Is Alton there too? Hi. How are you guys?
Good. Thanks for having us.
This is like my first three-way. My first three-way conference call. So I'm glad I nailed it. Thank you so much. I know we kind of threw this together last minute, but I'm definitely really excited to talk to you guys about your project. So before we start talking about City of Lights, Alton, can you give our listeners a little bit of a background of what the Micro Musical Theater Show is?
Okay. It is a venue in which people who have creative works that need to be expressed as musical present them in a nutshell. So we're looking for individual pieces that have a run length of 75 minutes or less and are topical and relevant and edgy and brilliantly written and brilliantly scored and brilliantly composed, and we take it into a studio and we record it as a radio play, and then we release it as a podcast.
I love that. I love because I love those old school radio plays. So I kind of like that this is like a resurgence on, a time before when people would just sit around and listen to the radio, and essentially we do the same thing today. It's like everything old is new again. Can you tell us what was your first ever? When did you start? What year? And then what was your first ever podcast musical?
Is that directed to me?
Yes, Alton. Yes.
Okay. Well, the first ever podcast musical. We've let's see, City of Light is our sixth or seventh one we've produced, and the first one is the first one being released under a sort of a new scheme of which we're promoting and exposing more people to the Micro Musical Theater Show. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yes, definitely. So now, Jan and Gabrielle, you are behind City of Lights.
Mm-hmm.
So talk to me a little bit about the creative process for this micro musical. What gave you the influence, or what was your inspiration for City of Lights?
I'm going to let Julie take that one.
Okay.
Yeah, so I lived for many years in Paris, and while I was living there, I noticed that for some reason Paris is one of those cities where people go to pivot in their life, take a breath, look around, change things up. Sometimes I think they do it consciously, sometimes, midlife crisis kind of stuff. Sometimes it's unconscious. But while I was living there, I just met numerous Americans and people of other nationalities that had chosen to move to Paris for one reason or another. But ultimately, the underlying effect was that they needed to change something. And when Gabby and Jan, who's not with us today, who's the composer, when we met doing the 2-year program at New Musicals Inc. in Los Angeles, I had this idea for a girl who kind of runs off to Paris, and the fact of being in Paris, just, everything going wrong from the minute she gets there is what ends up changing the direction of her life. And that sort of backbone structure was fleshed out when Gabby and Jan and I started working together. So that was the inspiration.
And now, Gabby, what is your role in... What is your role in all? Tell our listeners, Julie, what your position is, Gabby, what your position is in all of this, as far as the creative goes.
Oh, right. This is Gabby, and I am the book writer. Julie, who you just heard from, is the lyricist, and Jan, who's not on this call, is our composer.
So I love that. It's an all-woman team.
It is.
So did you guys know each other before? Well, I know you kind of mentioned, but like, were you friends? Were you put together professionally, then became friends? Like, what is the dynamic between the three ladies?
We met in this writing program, and in the first year of the program, it's a whole bunch of composers and lyricists and book writers, and some have dual disciplines. But throughout that first year, you're put together in a different team every single month to accomplish whatever that exercise is or whatever that assignment was that month. So throughout that year, we all bounced around. I worked with Jan. I worked with Julie a few times. I don't think the three of us were ever actually placed all on the same team during that year, but we've certainly got to know each other and their talents and their work, and so we sort of gravitated to want to work with people whose work we really gelled with and respected. And so then after that year ended, there was another year that was optional that we decided to all three embark on with this project.
Oh, I love that's so neat that you kind of like intrinsically were just connected, even though you were never on the same team during this process. But there was something there.
Yeah, not all together.
Right, yeah, but like you guys came together. Now, how did you meet Alton? So, Alton, how did you meet these three ladies? And then you could explain the process of how to get a micro musical onto your podcast.
Right, exactly. This was actually probably the easiest one of all of the 6 or 7 we've done so far to get to a finished product.
That's
and
nice
I'll get
to hear.
Yeah, thanks, Alton.
You're welcome. I had just a little bit of background, the way the whole concept for the micro musical show started. A friend of mine does a yearly program, sort of a jukebox musical, for his friends and other people who are interested at Don't Tell Mama every year. And a couple of years ago, I was sitting there listening to it, and I'm going, I really like this, and I would love to listen to it again. And of course, the light bulb went off in my head at that point. But why don't I just try to see if there are a lot of people doing this sort of thing, and is there a way to, more people need to hear these little pieces, basically, and there's not a lot of venues for them. So I did about a year and a half worth of research of dragging myself to Feinstein's 54 Below and to the green room and listening to all of these things. And there's a lot of really amazing stuff out there. Just one evening, I went to Feinstein's to hear City of Light. And there was a card on the table that said, if anybody's interested in helping us produce this, just let us call us. And I sat through the musical. I was very moved. It was gorgeous in a lot of ways, just in the sentiment and the lyrics and the story. And I just felt that this was definitely something that needed to be recorded for the Micro Musical Theater show. So I contacted them the next day, and then within a matter of weeks, we were in the studio recording it. It needed to be shortened a little bit and was designed for the purposes of a radio playing, which is actually fairly simple to do in this case. And here we are, and it's just a fantastic piece of work.
I heard the clips of it, and it really is. I was like, this is so nice. I was drinking my coffee and my avocado toast, and I was listening to City of Lights this morning, and the sun was shining and the birds were chirping, and I was kind of like, I really love this because it takes theater to a different level. I know we have all these live musicals that, are coming, on NBC, but there was something so refreshing about just hearing the audio. And
Did you feel like you needed to have an espresso and a croissant?
Yes, wine or a baguette, sure.
Yeah, I have to say that's one thing that when we've set out to write this is because I had spent so much time living in France and really had grown to love the French people so much, and yet in America there's over the years there's been this refrain kind of anti-French, that our goal was that by the time you got to the end of the play that you just wanted to board the first Air France flight to Paris and go spend a week there.
And you know what I love, and Alton, this is directed towards you too, because again, you brought up, the radio play. I mean, it really, I had to use my imagination, like reading an audio book but it is so visual anyway. Am I making sense? I saw everything that was happening.
Oh, good.
You know what I mean? And I was.
That's great.
Well, but no, I really loved it, and I know. And then you sent me some other clips. So can you talk? So the recording process. Do you use the same studio every time? Do you go to different recording studios? How does that work for you when you get these musicals submitted, Alton?
Well, the process is basically, I've got an amazing team that I work with, a very small team. Besides myself, there's Lauren Toulougian and Ralph Kelsey, both of Sandblast Productions, who have a great deal and very deep knowledge of music and musicals, all kinds of different kinds of genres of music. They're recording professionals, and they're also performing professionals. Mm-hmm. And they work with me. We go into a studio called the Bunker Studio in Brooklyn, which is an amazing, amazing place. And we take over the largest studio with instruments and vocalists and performers, and we record not in real time. We basically record one song at a time. Mm-hmm. And try to get the best out of every performance. We usually take 2 takes and pickups, so it's not just a straight 2-take sort of recording. It's more of a recording of a record album. Mm-hmm. And then there's a second recording session where we basically just do dialogue. And I have to say that I'm the facilitator in this process. I basically arrange for it to all happen, and I don't really have a lot of input into the creative process of the musical itself. I'm very clear that I want the creative team to be happy with, and it's their piece, it's their voice, it's their work, and I want to represent that the best way possible. So I just sort of organize the stuff that happens in the background. And everything that you hear is basically the creativity of this, in this case, the City of Light, and the others of the creative team, that's the creative piece.
And he organizes very well. And I will also give a shout out to Ralph and Lauren. They were both so incredibly efficient and helpful and super smart and knowledgeable. And when we had questions about, should we go with this or this? No, you need to do this. They knew exactly how to help us. And I thought they put a great product together.
Yeah, it was a really good experience. Very efficient, very professional.
Well, and that's why I want to talk. And the sound is so crisp and so clear. And, if I'm playing it on my, my home stereo system, it sounds like your actors are right there with me. And speaking of your actors, do you want to give a little shout out to the people that are in City of Lights?
Oh, yeah, they are fantastic. I mean, as Alton was saying, like, the studios were great, but I will say it was a little fast and furious, and they came in and threw it down, like, sometimes in one take. Mm-hmm. And I was super impressed with them. Do you want me to run down their names?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have the fabulous Christina Alabado playing Molly. And you can catch her now on Broadway in Mean Girls. So there's that little plug. We have Carrie Safran, who is playing Juliet, the fabulous sassy French girl. Jack Cotterell is Olivier. Anthony Norman, who you can see in The Prom on Broadway, is our Philippe. Let's see, who else was on this recording? Jane Blass plays Madame Courcelles. Raquel Arroyo was one of our ensemble members. She wasn't actually in the studio with us, but there were a few moments where we kept her recordings from the past. Mm-hmm. Katie Wilson, Zach Shaney, and who am I missing? Oh my gosh. Is that everybody? I was on there for a little bit too.
Ah.
The girls. Did I miss any?
I think everybody did a little bit of everything.
I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's
okay,
it.
I just want to make sure I didn't miss any names. Please help me if I did.
I know. Sorry to throw that at you. So now, Alton,
Okay.
Quick question. So you definitely have some heavy hitters, and a lot of the casts. Alton, do you cast these shows, or does the creative team?
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, I don't really involve myself in that level. I want the creatives to have for this to be their expression and not mine. And they know best. They know the best person to cast. They know the best person to do the roles that some of them were written for them. For example, to a certain degree, the role of Peggy in the new Peggy was written for Anne Harada.
Mm-hmm.
But at any rate, I don't involve myself in the casting. I might a little bit moving forward, but I'm not planning on doing that in the near future.
That's exciting, though, for you to to have launched this project, and the response has been so positive and so overwhelming. Alton, are you like, pinch me? I can't believe this is a thing that I'm doing.
Especially sitting in the studio and getting to listen to these amazing people do their thing is really a treat. That's probably the best part, I think, for me. And just working with creative people. I've always enjoyed working with creative people and helping elevate creatives in a way, in any way I can. It's been an interesting process, and I've learned a lot. I have a little bit of a musical background way back, so I get to pull up on that again and be able to read music, which is fun. Know that I still can.
And I love that you mentioned you like working with creatives, and essentially you want to help these creatives be heard. And what I love about your podcast is, in a world where we are online, I mean, let's face it, we all are online. There's few of us that aren't. I am online, obviously. I like that you want to see these people have a voice or have their art heard or seen, and creating this platform, I think, just elevates, where we can send theater to, not just TV. And you can reach a broader audience, because podcasts are very big now, and they're so accessible to the general population. So you are bringing theater, and I love how it's like, you have front seats. You definitely do. It's like being in the orchestra front row listening to these podcasts.
Right. It's very important. We know that most people, podcasts are a very sort of singular experience in a way. I mean, people experience them not in real time, not simultaneously, and they need to be really immersive, and we try to do that a lot with the sound design. But to your point about, I just felt that, as I did the research and listened to things and thought and just heard the incredible amount of talent, particularly in New York, and there's more talent outside of New York, of course,
mm-hmm.
and the fact that there was, the only people that get to hear these pieces are a few hundred people at most in a room at a cabaret or something, and maybe a few times only, and then they're basically shoved into the door and left, or maybe moved forward into the whole very long process. And this is a whole other aspect of this: the very long process of getting it on the stage. So I felt that I wanted. It turns out that I really wasn't trying to do this, but it turns out that the concept of all the world to stage is really relevant in this particular project. Because I think there are people outside of New York who would enjoy this kind of content, who are sitting in their cars wanting desperately something else to listen to, and some escapist stuff as they drive to and from work in Ohio or Indianapolis or someplace. And just wanted to get it out there in a much larger to a much larger audience, because these pieces really deserve that.
Oh,
I agree. The other interesting thing is that I don't have part of my interest and not financial but personal interest in this is helping the creatives with moving their project forward and seeing their creative project move forward. So there's no rules about the use of it in the sense of they can send it around to other producers and other things to try to move it forward and grow it and maybe end up actually on a Broadway stage. The micromusical theater show is not the end point. It's in a lot of cases the beginning point of a lot of the pieces that we're doing.
Well, and that was going to be my next question for the girls. So what is next for City of Lights? Because you've had this launching on this wonderful platform. Where do you foresee, or do you have a project on the horizon that's coming up?
Go ahead, Jill.
I'll take this. It's Julie. So we've submitted to various festivals. We're looking for regional production. Clearly, this podcast is going to be enormously helpful for us to spread the word about the show, because not only can we say that we've had, a fairly lengthy but very positive development history. This show was selected for Stephen Schwartz's ASCAP workshop, his musical theater workshop. So we have lots of kudos, but it's a big country, and there's a lot of people out there trying to get their shows seen and heard and produced. So to be selected for this podcast series is another kudo for our show. It helps us promote it. And, we'd like to now get a full-fledged production. We've done productions at the level of theater festivals, which are sort of down and dirty and really quick, and it's more props than true scenery. But we're hoping to find either a producer or a theatrical organization that will put it up for us as a full production.
And how long does I know that it's shorter for the podcast, but what is the running time of City of Lights?
It's 100 minutes straight through.
105.
Oh, that's
so we
perfect.
actually had to cut it down quite a bit just for the 54 Below concert, and then we had to cut it down even more for the micro musical. And we couldn't use stage directions in that like we did at the Feinstein's performance. So that's why they used all the sound effects to try to fill in all the stuff that you didn't really know was happening. Like you said, you had to use your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
But there's you're getting the full story on the podcast, but it's pared down. You're not scenes. There might be like a chorus taken out here, or you're missing an A section of a song there, or a reprise of something, but you're still getting the full story.
Oh no, I definitely, I mean, from the snippets that I was sent, I definitely, I knew what was going on. I wasn't like lost at all, which is like what the brilliance of this concept of these micro musicals is that you can take a full length musical and you could pare it down, and you're still getting the full. Like, I felt very fulfilled when I was listening to it.
It's the differentiations in the venues, actually. I respect the time of the people who take the time to listen, and I don't want to I just want to use it as efficiently as possible and give them the best product possible. And there's nothing wrong with it being longer, of course, and the songs that were cut, it was difficult, and there were some really good songs in there that didn't really make it into the micro musical show version. But when you go to the theater, you want to see something that's 90 minutes, 2 hours,
right?
And you have to fill that time with something. So it's just a different version for the venues, but the story is pretty much the same.
And also in the theater, you've got dancing and action and so much things to look at. So it does make sense to pare it down when you don't have all that to look at.
Well, and it's interesting what Alton said, because web series are generally like 5 to 7 minutes, because people won't really sit for like an hour in front of their computer, but they will sit for about 7 minutes and watch, because a lot of the web series that I watch are like 3 minutes to 7 minutes long.
We'll sit for over an hour in front of our computer.
Exactly. We'll scroll, right? We'll scroll and take all these tests to know what kind of potato we are, but we won't.
Exactly.
It's the truth. But the micro musical, because Alton sent me a couple of clips of everything, so I got a bunch of different shows. I felt very like I knew what was going on. I felt like it was cut perfectly, but I wanted more. So I would be totally down with seeing a regional or an off-Broadway or off-Broadway production of City of Lights.
Or Broadway.
Or Broadway.
Not
Listen,
out of the
that's
question.
right. The Broadway. Definitely. Ladies, where can our listeners find you on the interwebs? Do you have websites?
Go ahead.
Most of the information is available at themicromusicalshow.com. You can also follow us on all the socials with Micro Music Show as a search for that. But you can always find it just by searching the Micro Musical Show. The Micro Musical Show. Right now, you can also find it on the City of Light is available at the moment on iTunes and Spotify and every other podcasting platform out there you can possibly be using on any device that you happen to have handy. We're putting out the musicals at the moment. The model is to do the musicals for free for a couple of months, and then make them available for purchase after that. And we hope people will enjoy them enough that they will go back to the micromusicalshow.com and do a subscription to help support it in the long run.
I love that idea because I think, it's important to support independent artists and all these, especially that we're getting into this new age of theater and music and, online living. And basically this is what we're turning into. So why not have it? We subscribe to so many other things. Why not subscribe and have some entertainment? Alton, I'm sorry.
May I just step in on 1 second?
Sure.
If somebody wants to learn more about the City of Light, we do have a website for the show as well. It's www.cityoflight, and that's singular, City of Light.
City of Light.
Musical.
I'm sorry, I've been saying City of Lights. Forgive me. City of Light.
cityoflightmusical.com. And that includes all of the songs and features about, the development history. And you can see pictures of us, the writers. And, shout outs to the Micro Musical Show as well. They are linked at this point. But, yes, if somebody wants to know a little bit more about the show, that's where they can find more information.
Perfect.
And we're also on all the socials,
and follow its
too.
progress to a big white way. That would be really...
Yes.
Yes, cheer us on, please.
I will. I'm going to
We're
come
on
opening night.
Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, all at City of Light Show.
Oh, that's what it was, City of Light Show, and that's why I added the S. My apologies. Yes, City of Light Show.
Oh, yes.
Definitely go follow them. Ladies, thank you so much. This was so exciting. I really enjoyed the music today. Like I said, I'm up early. I'm an early morning person, had my coffee. It was thrilling. And, I am involved with some regional theater, so I'll be in touch with you guys offline.
Oh, super.
Good.
Thank you.
Off air for sure. And Alton, I believe you're staying on with me for a couple more minutes so I can talk to you about other things.
All right, well, it was our pleasure.
Thank you,
so
Gabby.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Okay,
Julie.
bye-bye.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Hello.
So we were just talking with City of Light creators, Gabrielle Wagner Mann and Julie Weiner. And now we're with Alton. Alton, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about, because you have some other shows.
Yes.
You have the one with Max Crum. So can you just list for our listeners all your micro musicals from beginning to now?
From beginning to now, the first one was called Trapped in the Closet by the amazing Sarah Naughton and Jake Weinstein. And it's about Sarah reads audiobooks for Audible and stuff, and it was about her experiences reading those books. And it's a very, very humorous production. It's a bit of a jukebox musical in its own way. And they've since, they're also working on some new pieces as well. So, anyway, that's the first one. The second one is called, what is the second one? It's called The New Peggy, which was written by Drew Larimore and J. O'Connor Navarro, and it stars Ann Harada. This one, it's a very interesting one because it deals with a bit with mental illness in its own way. It's a comedy, brilliantly performed by, and just sort of a tour de force by Ann Harada, and another amazing cast. And I think a lot of people can identify with this piece, if you work in an office. That was called The New Peggy. The other one, the one after that, is called Crayola in Love, which is about a biracial fellow who grew up in Los Angeles and his experiences, and an extraordinarily talented musician and composer and singer, Kyle R. Carter, who's currently touring in The Lion King. And he put this amazing autobiographical piece together that contains all kinds of music, from sort of hip-hop to trip-hop to romantic stuff and poetry, and he basically did it all himself. And I'm just like, it's an amazing piece of work. Following that is A Drink with Death by Christian Grey, who's gotten a lot of attention lately because he's had a big show at Joe's Pub recently. And it is a collection of, the storyline is basically folks who are singing their way into, they arrive at the pearly gates and they present a song as to whether they get into the pearly gates or get sent away from the pearly gates. And it's hosted by the Devil, which is beautifully played by Robert Moran, and a host of Broadway talent sing individual songs, and they're just incredible pieces of work. And they're very, very challenging pieces to do. And Christian just did an amazing job of bringing this together and making it one really cohesively beautiful story about, and that came out at Halloween. The following one, Song for Sighted Girls, which is actually a very interesting piece, I believe. It's produced by Kaylee Marshall, and she, again, much like Kyle, did the book lyrics and composed this whole piece. And her frustration was basically the lack of songs in the musical theater canon that addressed homosexuality in a relatable way to the modern-day female, and she definitely addresses it in this. And it's a bit of a tour de force with her. She's not necessarily well-known in the Broadway circuit, but she's definitely going to be well-known at some point as her career develops. And then we have Snow Way Out, which has Max Corm in it, and it's about folks stranded in a log cabin just before at Christmas, and it's a very, very touching, beautifully written piece by Becca Anderson, Dan Marshall, and Julian Blackmore.
So now you had mentioned that are you a performer as well?
I am not. I gave up performing when my voice changed.
So before
I could no longer sing on key, so then that was a bit of a relief because I really didn't enjoy it that much.
Right. So have you always been more, director, producer on that end of it?
Yeah. My background is in television. Just briefly, I went to the High School Performing and Visual Arts in Houston and was exposed to a tremendous amount of different kinds of art, whether it be dance, musicals, orchestras, jazz, et cetera, all at the same time in my high school experience, and that had an indelible impact on me. And I was also fortunate enough to find my passion about that time, which was to be involved in producing content in some capacity. So ever since I've been doing that, and this is sort of the latest incarnation of that. I'm very much a background person. This project is not about me. The project is about creative people who I just described and their amazing work. And a huge number of them are just really young folks too. I'm just sort of like, these kids are in their 20s, and I'm just so amazed with technology and all the stuff they have access to today. They can write all of these things just sitting at their computers, and some of them do. And I'm just like, holy cow! This, it's just amazing the depth of just the talent, at least in New York, and I'm anxious to try to find the depths of those in some other cities as well.
So can you just give our listeners some of your TV background, like some stuff that you've done?
My which background? I'm sorry?
Your television background.
Oh, okay. Let's see. A lot of work in news, and TV news and documentaries and documentary films. I had a post-production company, visual effects and post-production company for a number of years. with offices in New York and London and Los Angeles, and just putting teams together is another thing. I find capable people and somebody has an idea, and I put teams together to produce documentaries and things like that. And the TV stuff, I still work on TV stuff. I edit a television show every week. I'm still very much involved in that. But this is like I said, this is a little bit of a departure for me. But it taps into everything that I've learned in all these years, and I think it gives my perspective on it is a little different because I'm not necessarily thinking about it as on stage, and I hope they get to be on stage. But I just want these pieces are so unique and so fantastic that I just want for them to be heard in the way that I could do it efficiently, supposed to do them as audio recordings and then make them immersive as possible. And then the result of that is that they're really unique and hard to duplicate. And there's really not another podcast out there at all like this that I could find that has this level of production quality and variety and trying to really dig into different kinds of messages, diversity, et cetera, and also presented to a new audience and a new format, i.e. podcasts, the millennials. There's just so many win-wins here, I think, that it was just, I could not do it, basically.
And I'm sure
you're something that I had to do.
Right, and your knowledge of TV and TV production, I'm sure that also helped you. You said, you're good at putting teams together, so you obviously know how to do this. And I know like you mentioned, like the podcast is a millennial thing. Because I agree, I'm not I'm older. I'm not a millennial myself. So,
I'm certainly not either. So
yeah. So, but like you kind of have your finger on the pulse, and I'm sure your background in TV has helped you create this amazing platform. So, you can get this music, these shows out and share, with the world. And the great thing about the World Wide Web is, we're not only talking about the United States, we're talking about the world. So, I mean, these podcasts can be heard anywhere where there's the internet, essentially.
Right. And they are being listened to. I mean, still the majority of the audience is in the U.S. right now. But when I look at the data, there's about 20% that's outside of the U.S. And I think that's great. And there's so many people who love musicals in general. That and they just want to listen to them all the time, and they buy the albums, and they save up huge amounts of money to go see them on Broadway. They come to New York, but then that seems very limiting to me, and I just feel like these pieces in particular just would benefit from, and just people in general would benefit from listening to something just so incredibly unique and different than the other stuff that they have to listen to. It's an escapist, and they're designed in a way that you can kind of listen to one part on your way to work and one part on your way back, and you like the tunes are all, melodies are hummable, and they go over and over in my head. It's really difficult when you have two or three in production at the same time, and just sort of like I can't get one song out of my head at any particular time. Sort of challenging, but I don't mind because they're all so great.
Are you working on another one right now? Do you have one that you're working on presently?
Yeah, well, there are 3 that we're going to try to record this year. We put 7 in the can before the project launched, and so we had a runway. I didn't want to necessarily just put one out there and not be able to deliver a second one.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very important to me to start with, the project to start with credibility and have legs. So there's basically a year's worth of content already in the can, and this year we're going to start producing pieces for the rest of the season, for the next season, which would be starting next year.
Oh, that's cool.
They take about 5+ weeks a piece to put together, and so there's nothing I can talk about specifically. We're just trying to vet the pieces that we're going to do next, and there's a lot of interest.
Yeah, no, definitely. What are some things that you do? We always ask our people that we interview, what do you do to unwind? You work in television. Now you have this very successful podcast.
Oh, I don't unwind.
You don't unwind.
No.
Okay.
No, of course I do. But I mean, I listen to podcasts, of course. But no, I don't. I'm a Capricorn, so it doesn't stop for me.
You're always thinking. You're always working. You're always thinking about that next thing to create.
Yeah.
So, can you give our listeners one more shout for where they could find the Micro Musical Theater Show?
Sure. The Micro Musical Theater Show can be found at micromusicalshow.com on the interwebs, and at Micro Music Show on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Oh, it's so fantastic!
And I have to give a shout out to Janine Papio, rather, who's doing great work and letting it also helping let people know what's going on.
Oh, she's amazing. She's such a good friend. And she was like, when she was like, "Can you do this interview?" I'm like, "Yes, of course." I love talking to people, and I love talking to other creatives. Because sometimes it could be isolating when you're a creative and you're kind of rotating in, I don't want to say a non-creative world, but when you're intermingled. So I always love talking to other creatives and, picking their brain or hearing their story. And what I love about you is that you're not in competition. You want to see people be successful. And I think sometimes that gets lost in show business, and I love to surround myself with people that want to see other people succeed and be successful.
That is the motive, yes.
Because like you mentioned, who knows? I mean, maybe City of Light, there's no reason why you couldn't go to Broadway. I was very impressed with the quality. It sounded like a Broadway cast recording to me.
Yeah, well, it's a bit more than a Broadway cast recording. There's that analogy too, but it's a bit more than that because it's just not the songs by themselves with no context. Not that there's anything wrong with Broadway cast.
No.
I enjoy some of those too. And I just wanted to differentiate the whole project with the level of quality and bringing my decades of experience in professional television and production in general. Wanted to just it had to be a certain level for me to be happy with it. And just as a tiny little to talk about detail.
Yes.
I don't. For people who listen to City of Light, the cafe scenes are actually some of the background sound that was in those dialogue and around the songs in the cafe in City of Light. I recorded actually in the cafe that inspired the musical. Shortly after we decided to actually do this, I was on my way to Paris. I'm one of many people who actually love Paris and like to spend as much time as I can there.
Right.
And so I went to this cafe and recorded a bunch of background sound of the cafe. So when you hear the clinking of the mugs and the French speaking in the background, it is real. It is from the place that actually inspired this musical.
I love that. I love that.
There's a little bit of tidbit of detail. And the other, I also wanted to mention that we subscribers we dig a lot more into. It's not just presenting the musical. We have a conversation with the creatives that's recorded with a conversation with Julian Fleischer, who is at W2XR and WNYC. Does the Great American Songbook. He sits down and does an interview with the creatives, and we talk about the process and what the whole thing, and just it's a very fascinating conversation, and that's available to people who subscribe to the Micro Music Theater Show, as well as the making of the musical. We shoot video behind the scenes and to document it all. Some of it we use in promotion, but most of it's used sort of like the process of recording the song. So you see, the takes, you see the retakes, you see the dialogue being added separately in a different studio and all that kind of stuff. And it's I'm a detail-oriented person generally, and I like the process as much as I do the product, and I think other people do. So I like sharing that part of it too.
And how neat, though, for the subscribers that they get some behind. It's not just the audio. It's not just the musical. They get so much more, and then it makes it personal for them too, which is definitely really, really neat. And I like how you can listen to it in your car. I mean, I've started listening to I used to listen to the radio, and now I've started listening to podcasts. I have a longer drive, or I'm going to work, and I'll throw on a podcast. The Micro Musical Theater Show is perfect for the commute to work. Perfect.
That's exactly right. And I think that's definitely a good part of our audience, people sitting on New Jersey Transit or Metro North or on the CTA or whatever, on I-5, commuting. And this is just, it's their own little moment of La La Land, if you will, in a way, if you're on the 405. To get around.
Absolutely. No, I think it's genius, and I'm actually excited to see, like when Janine and I were talking about it, I'm like, this is such a neat, I was like, color me curious. I want to know more about this, because I think it's fantastic, and I think it brings theater into people's homes or their cars or their life in a way that they never imagined, but it's, your finger's on the pulse of something new here.
I hope so. I hope so. I could go on, but I'm not going to.
I know. Alton, it was so great. I'm so glad that you were able to give me your time today. I was really I know we set this up very last minute, but I'm so glad that we were able to make it work. And I'm excited to see what comes next for you and for the Micro Musical Theater Show. One more time, tell our listeners where they can subscribe and get all these great bonuses when they subscribe to your...
All the details can be found at micromusicalshow.com.
micromusicalshow.com. So go there, listeners, subscribe. You'll be in for a treat. I mean, the voices alone. When I was listening to the clips that you sent me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm like, and it's like they're right, you listen...
You're listening to basically people who are starring on Broadway.
I know, and it's so personal. You know what I mean? Because it's in my house, and it's like you said, it's not just the song. It's you're getting dialogue too.
Yeah, it's the play. When I explain it as a radio play, more people sort of understand that concept, and that seems to be the best way to describe it. It's a radio play, but it's actually a musical. A small one.
Well, I think you're on to something, Alton, and I wish you the best of luck. And
thank you.
Hopefully I'll get to meet you someday, maybe off the interwebs. But thank you so much for giving us your time. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye. So we were just talking to the creator of the Micro Musical Theater Show, Alton Christensen, and some of the creators of City of Light, Julie Weiner, Gabrielle, Wagner, Mann. You can go to the I'm going to mess it up. I'm going to mess up, and I'm going to go to my Instagram because I'm going to have to fix a couple things anyway on it that I made a mistake, City of Light. So you can go to micromusicalshow.com. Subscribe. You get so many bonuses when you subscribe to the Micro Musical Theater Show, behind the scenes stuff, some videos. You will literally get a 5 to 7 minute musical. It is off the chain. It is so polished. They're all delightful. Broadway heavy hitters, Broadway up and comers on these recordings, and in the comfort of your own home, in your own car. Like Alton said, if you're on New Jersey Transit or wherever you're traveling from. So it's definitely worth it. It's, this is where we're headed, friends. We live in an online world, whether we like it or not. So why not bring a little theater, support artists? There's a lot of us out here, and we're just trying to make it. So next week we'll be back. Danny hopefully will be back with us next week. He unfortunately couldn't be here today due to a family emergency. But tomorrow I just want to give a shout out that Danny and I will be chewing on at the Beacon. We're going to go see The Lightning Thief, the Percy Jackson musical together, which we're really excited about. And you should go out and get to see some live theater this weekend. God of Carnage at the Women's Theater Company. Curious George and the Golden Meatball at the Growing Stage. And if you go to New Jersey Theater, realliance.org, you can see a list of what is happening in all the professional theaters of New Jersey. Shout out to Comedy of Tenors, my husband at the Barn Theater, which is doing very well. It's selling out. So get out and see some live theater, listen to some podcasts, go see some live music. If we don't support this stuff, it goes away. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks, everyone.